All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on solar energy for Wisconsin businesses. Today's webinar is brought to you by Renew Wisconsin and Focus on Energy. My name is Andy Gastisha. I'm with the Renewable Energy Incentive Program through Focus on Energy, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're excited to discuss how solar can help your business this year and what incentives from Focus on Energy are available to help with that transition. Today's presentation will be recorded, so you'll be in listen-only mode. We will have a question and answer session at the end, and we ask that you submit your questions electronically in the right-hand box of your screen. We'll go through those at the end of the presentation, and we'll start off a brief introduction of our two organizations this year. So a little bit about Focus on Energy. Focus on Energy is Wisconsin Utilities' statewide energy efficiency and renewable resource program. It's been around since 2001. It has the primary mission objectives of helping Wisconsin residents and businesses manage their rising energy costs. It's also tasked with promoting in-state economic development and protecting our environment. One of the primary ways they do this is in providing incentives for energy efficiency and renewable energy. And all of these rebates are available to you and your business. And with that, I want to introduce our primary speaker, Tyler Hebner, Executive Director of Renew Wisconsin. Tyler's been the Executive Director of Renew Wisconsin since 2013 and leads their nonprofit efforts to promote renewable energy in Wisconsin. And with that, I'll let Tyler expand on his background and get us started on how solar energy can help your Wisconsin business.
Great. Thanks so much, Andy. We're really excited to do this webinar with Focus on Energy. Renew Wisconsin is a nonprofit. We've been around since 1991, and we work to support a variety of renewable energy technologies in Wisconsin, including solar, wind, biomass and biogas, geothermal, and hydropower. And really excited today to talk about solar power for your business. And you can advance the slide, Andy. So first, just going to talk a little bit about why solar power in Wisconsin. A home installation there on the left and a beautiful super value up in northern Wisconsin there on the right with solar panels on it. Next slide. The first thing is that it is sunny enough in Wisconsin. We get this question a lot. Certainly there is snowfall in the state. Looking at these charts, these maps here are maps of how much solar energy from the sun hits a square meter of space throughout the United States and throughout Germany as a comparison. And Germany is a useful comparison because right now about 7% of all the energy produced throughout a year in Germany is coming from solar power. And there's even days on the weekends when solar is providing almost 50% of the total power in the entire country. And if you look at how purple that is, they're getting a lot less sunlight than if you look at kind of the greener areas of the Midwestern United States. And yes, it is sunnier down in Phoenix, Arizona, but we're using the power here in Wisconsin. We can make our power in Wisconsin, and it's definitely sunny enough for us to cost effectively install solar power. Go ahead. The second big reason is that the cost to install solar is down about 75% in the last decade. The orange line going down there on your screen depicts this, and it's really been a phenomenal set of technological innovations as well as scale. So we're building and deploying more solar than ever throughout the United States, and that has helped to drive the cost down. And so those costs, as you can see, are starting to level off. And so that's another reason why it's a great time to install solar. Next slide, please. The third reason is that the technologies keep improving. This is a very complicated chart, but basically what it shows is 40 years of technological innovation of different types of solar panels. And you can see this chart goes up and to the right. So as the years progress, the panels of all types continue to get more and more efficient. So it's again, it's a technology that keeps getting better every year, but you're building on 40, 45 years of technology advancements when you install panels here in 2018. Next slide, please. One of the final reasons is that solar is very reliable. The panels themselves are warranted for 25 years. They come ready to handle all weather, including golf ball size hail. Um, there's a very low failure rate among the panels themselves, and clearly they're used in outer space, they're used in marine applications, they're used all over in a variety of applications because the panels and the technology are very reliable. Next slide. So just kind of some additional reasons on the financial side is number one, reducing operating costs. Right now, you're paying an electric bill to whatever utility is serving you. Um, Solar power offers a way to reduce that electric bill and to do it cost effectively. We'll talk later about the kind of the costs and the benefits from a cost perspective and a money perspective. The other thing is that electricity prices tend to rise over time, and historically in Wisconsin they've risen between 1% and 3% per year, depending on the year. That's starting to flatten out as our utilities have sort of ended a building cycle. But as we look forward for the next 25 to 30 years that your solar panels would be operating, it's very likely that those utility prices are going to go up rather than down. And so this is a hedge. You're putting in place a hedge on your power costs against those rising electricity prices over time. Next slide. It also gives you a competitive advantage and differentiates yourself from your competition. We're hearing a lot of stories about this in a variety of ways. Some is from a marketing perspective to their end customers. Some is is business to business related, either suppliers up through Walmart's supply chain or through a Coca-Cola supply chain or through any number of really large American corporations that are not only themselves looking to add renewables, but they're looking to push that through their whole supply chain. We're also hearing a lot more stories about businesses installing solar to attract employees, especially younger employees, millennials and folks 30, 35 years and below. They want to go to work for a company that's doing the right thing, that has a forward mission, that is trying to take care of the employees and take care of sustainability. And so we're just seeing that more and more. From the end customer perspective, there's been a variety of studies that show that consumers are choosing to buy and willing to buy from brands that they believe are doing environmental and or social good. So we're just seeing a lot of push in this direction from businesses. There are also tax credits and financial benefits that we'll talk about a little bit more later. And then being able to produce your own energy and have that self-sustaining capability is important for some businesses too. Finally, if you look at where we're getting our power from today in Wisconsin, it's primarily from out of state. It's primarily from coal, coal that we're bringing in on a train, or natural gas that we're bringing in pipelines and burning that in the power plants. The power plants are here, but the actual energy resource is from out of state, and so we're sending a lot of money out of the state to buy electricity, and clearly we can make that power ourselves and save money while we're doing it. So it's a great win-win for a lot of reasons. Next slide, please. Solar is growing in Wisconsin in a variety of ways. As the costs have come down, the blue bars at the bottom shows homes and businesses, and so this is in kilowatts is kind of the solar power capacity on the left-hand side. That's how big the bars are. So the amount of solar that's going in continues to grow among that sector, and now it's getting so cost effective. That green bar is that our utilities are starting to look at adding solar too, because the pricing is so good that it's now the most cost effective resource for them as well. So it's a really exciting opportunity and time to be looking at solar power. The industry itself is a big job creator. There's about 250,000 people as of 2017 that are working in the solar industry, and that's a 168% increase since 2010. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the equipment. This is a picture of the Fox River Mall in Appleton that has solar panels on it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the equipment and the different applications for solar power. Um, Number one most important thing is when we talk about solar, especially through Focus on Energy, is that it's what's called a grid-tied solar electric system. This means that you're still going to be connected to your primary electric utility. Um, there are certain individuals, certain businesses that might be looking for off-grid or looking to disconnect from the grid. It's still a pretty expensive proposition to do that. There are batteries and things that you can do, but about 99% or more of the solar customers uh, do a grid-tied system. So they're using solar to produce some or even most of their electricity, but they're still connected to the utility so that they have that year-round and day-long service from their traditional utility. Um, this is often the least expensive way to get solar because you don't have to have a battery backup system. What we try to do is that you want to size your system, size your solar panels, how many you need based on the electric use. So you don't want to be producing more energy than what you're using. And then secondly, how big your property is, how big your roof space is may also limit how many solar panels you can put on. There in the house in that image, you can see the solar panels on the roof as an example, and this equipment would be the same for a business installation as well. But basically, you have an inverter that converts the DC electricity. The solar panels make electricity in the same way, direct current, which is kind of like a AA battery, which is different than your wall outlets. And so you need a device to convert it to the same electricity you use in the rest of your building. There's a disconnect switch, and then it connects to your electrical panel, which is how it feeds the power right into to the buildings, being able to use that power directly. Next slide, please. So the major components that you would be purchasing are the panels themselves. On the left there, um, they're called panels or solar modules. Putting many together makes up a solar array. It directly converts sunlight into electricity. There's no moving parts. This is a chemical reaction. When the sunlight, the photons from the sun, hit the materials in that solar panel, it pushes out electricity, and that just happens with no moving parts. There's 25-year warranties on most standard equipment. They're designed, like I said, to handle golf ball sized hail. They're very robust. And yes, the snow is on there. Depending on what angle your solar panels are at on your roof will determine how fast that snow melts off. But the long and the short of it is that it does melt off. And as soon as there's kind of a little corner of the solar panel that can get free, um, the rest of it melts off pretty quickly. The other big piece of equipment is the inverter, and this, like I said, converts the direct current electricity to alternating current, which is what you use in the rest of your building. These are typically warranted for 10 years, and a lot of field experience is telling us they last for about 10 to 12 years. So when you look at this, you probably will have to buy a new inverter about halfway through the life of the solar panels at the 10 to 12 year mark. So that's something that would be built into a future purchase schedule. And then finally, this connects to the monitoring equipment so that you might have an app or you might have a monitor inside your building showing the solar production and how much solar power it's making almost minute by minute if you wish. Next slide, please. There's two different kind of sizes of solar panels. Most businesses are able to take advantage of the larger one if you've got a flat roof or a large roof space. The smaller ones can come in handy if you have a more limited amount of roof space, and that just depends on the application. Next slide, please. So here's just four different business installations that have happened. I think these were all 2017 installations, just to give you a different flavor. So the one in the upper left is a company called Componex, based in Deerfield, Wisconsin. That was completed by two companies, Convergence Energy and Arch Electric. Just to the right of that, I'll go clockwise around here. So to the right of that, that is a ground-mounted array at the Necedah Screw Press facility in Necedah, and that was installed by Northwind. Bottom right is a Subaru dealership in La Crosse, Dahl Subaru. You can see the solar panels on the roof there. That was installed by H&H Solar. And then on the left, we've got about 7 or 8 different breweries in Wisconsin. This is the most recent one, Bare Bones Brewery in Oshkosh, and this installation was installed by Eland Electric. We have a really great network of solar installers covering the whole state, and no matter where you're located, there's a solar installer relatively nearby that is able and willing to serve you. And Renew Wisconsin and Focus on Energy can both help you connect you with those solar installers, also called trade allies. Next slide, please. So, what makes a property good for solar? The number one thing is like a south-facing roof or a flat roof. You've got the sun is clearly coming from the south, and even as it goes throughout the day from east to west, you need to be able to orient your panels either flat or pointed to the south in some way. East and west applications are increasingly common. Um, some of those are being used on flat roofs, and they're just like putting the east and west panels right next to each other, and there's some reasons to do that. If you've got a pitched roof and you're looking at just straight east or just straight west, those applications are increasingly common too. And the main reason is that the cost for solar panels has come down so dramatically that it can still be cost effective. Andy can mention this too. At this point in time, you have to be within 45 degrees of due south to get a focus on energy rebate. The next big thing is your roof unshaded? So this is typically less of a problem for commercial and business applications than it is for homes, but clearly you need to have access to the sun. The sun needs to be able to get through without having to go through trees to produce the power on those panels. The third is about structural soundness of the roof itself, and this can be easy depending on how strong your building is. We've heard of instances where you have to bring in a structural engineer to check and make sure that the roof is structurally sound. So it's going to be dependent on your building and whether or not you have a building engineer or an on-site O&M person that knows these things, or whether if you're a smaller entity, you may not know those things, and you got to look into it. But that's clearly very important. The next item is for businesses. There's some really attractive tax and depreciation benefits. I'll talk more about those in the finances. But you have to be a profit-making business. You have to be paying federal taxes to be able to take advantage of a tax credit. So that's important to consider. Next is the business energy efficient? Typically, if you're looking at your roof space, and if you can put as many solar panels on as would cover your entire usage, you really want to think first about can I do LED lights? Can I do anything that might reduce the amount of energy that I'm using and the amount of money that I'm spending? The reason is that you want to size your solar panel array to at the most produce 100% of what you're using throughout the year. You don't want to go in and build a solar panel array that's going to be 30 or 50% bigger or twice as big as what you need. Making that excess power and selling it to the utility, you're not going to get paid very much money for that. The value proposition is really in offsetting your utility purchases, which are at a higher rate than what the utility is going to pay you for making a lot of extra power. And then the final and kind of emerging opportunity is we're seeing a lot more interest in electric vehicles, or this idea of driving on sunshine. So using the solar power to create electricity and putting that electricity into electric vehicles so that you're driving on renewable energy. We're seeing that on the residential side, and we're also hearing more businesses and nonprofit organizations interested in that transition too. It's really exciting new opportunity with all the new electric cars that are coming to the market. Next slide. A couple more pictures here. City of Fitchburg, Oregon High School. We're primarily talking about business. As Focus on Energy goes, any non-residential application is eligible for the incentive. So I wanted to throw in some government and school district photos here too as well. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about the economics and incentives. Actually, I'm going to kick it to Andy to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. So we have a couple overview facts here regarding the incentives available through Focus on Energy for your business. Currently, the incentive available to you is 12% off the system cost, or 12% of the total system cost, capped at $4,000. So this means that you can end up getting 12% off of that, whatever that system cost is, as you obtain bids from your solar trade ally. We currently have a remaining budget of $101,000 for 2018. If you were to divide that out using that $4,000 cap, it means we have enough room for roughly 25 business projects through the end of this year. So we encourage everyone on the call and any other businesses in your circles who may be interested in going solar to reserve your incentive funding. And the best way to do that is to call a Focus on Energy trade ally. Recently announced were 2019 to 2022 incentives for businesses. However, program details for that won't be available until later this year. So we definitely encourage everyone to reserve your incentive funding now, since we don't know what project funding will look like in the future in terms of whether it's better or worse on a per project basis. If we take a look at installation criteria, kind of echo some of what Tyler had already said, you must have a Focus on Energy participating electric utility. That system must face between southeast and southwest. So while it is certainly possible to put solar panels on the east and west facing portions of your roof, the Focus on Energy is only able to incentivize those portions of the system that face between southeast and southwest. South is your ideal facing roof. The system must include panels and an inverter to be considered a full system, and the panels must have a tilt between 10 and 50 degrees to qualify for an incentive. This helps assure you're going to get the maximal output from your system. We also have a requirement of less than 10% system shading and a requirement of a minimum 5-year warranty on all systems installed. As Tyler said, however, there's panels are expected to last 25 years, and that's what we're generally seeing from manufacturers in terms of warranties. And then one other note here, that lease to own systems are eligible for incentives so long as the end destination, or the end owner, I should say, is you, the customer, that system will be owned by you at the end of that leasing period. So if we want to talk a little bit about the process for obtaining your incentive and working with your solar trade ally, you can find a solar trade ally on the Focus on Energy website. That link is at the bottom of this slide. Your trade ally will help you reserve incentives by submitting a reservation form. After that point, the trade ally will install the solar power system and help you submit your incentive application. And after your incentive application is processed, or is reviewed and processed, you'll receive your rebate check, which again is that 12% of project cost up to a cap of $4,000. So if you're interested in solar energy, especially through the Focus on Energy program, we encourage everyone to call a Focus on Energy trade ally today. So with that, I'll throw it back to Tyler to talk through tax credits and some other benefits.
Super. Thanks, Andy. Another I've mentioned this a couple times. There is a federal tax credit available for currently 30% of the cost of the total system. And that tax credit is going to start to phase down over time. So the orange bar there represents the commercial level for that tax credit as it's currently in law from our U.S. Congress. It's 30% for 2018 and 30% for 2019. And then it starts to step down to 26% in 2020, 22% by 2021. And then for businesses, it's going to be at 10% at 2022 and for years after that under current. So right now, and 2018 is a great time. That's still the full 30% tax credit. Next slide. So we thought it'd be useful to kind of go through some different sized solar PV systems and what the initial cost might be, what the incentive through Focus on Energy might be, and then what the remaining cost might be. So I threw out 10 different size systems, a 10 kilowatt system, a 20 kilowatt system, and a 100 kilowatt system. A 10 kilowatt might be for like a local kind of convenience store or small retail. A 20 kilowatt would be about twice that size, and then a 100 kilowatt, you're probably getting into, if it's a retail, it would be a Walmart or a store of that size or a small manufacturer, something like that. And I just realized I had a little bit of wrong math that we can correct as we go down here for the 10 kilowatt system. But the Focus on Energy incentive, so the initial cost is that first line there. And the larger the system you get, I threw in some average ideas of what the cost might be. It will go down a little bit on a per watt basis or per unit basis if you get a bigger system. And so that reflects that here. And so, looking at $27,000 or so for a 10 kilowatt system, about $50,000 for a 20 kilowatt system, and about $225,000 for a 100 kilowatt system. The error that I made is that the 10 kilowatt system would not be eligible for $4,000. It would be capped at 12%, which would be about $3,300. And so I'll have to correct that going forward. But the 20 and the 100 kilowatt system would be eligible for a $4,000 system, a $4,000 rebate through Focus on Energy. Then you also take off the 30% tax credit, which is kind of the difference between the initial cost and the Focus rebate is what the 30% is applied to, and so that's a reduction. And then the accelerated depreciation. It used to be that we could accelerate this over 5 years. So it's a 25-year product, but you can accelerate, if you're a business, you can accelerate that depreciation over 5 years. Under the recently passed tax law from last fall or early this year, that's now you're able to take the depreciation in 1 year, like you are for many of your other business expenses. And so the long and the short of it is that's probably worth about 20% of the system cost if you can take advantage of that on your taxes. And a financial expert, accountant, et cetera, would be able to better explain that and how you can take advantage of that. But suffice it to say that it's it's also a significant benefit for you on your federal taxes. And so if you look down at the bottom, after all said and done, a $27,000 10 kilowatt system, a business might end up paying after they've gotten their tax rebates more like $11,000 out of pocket. A 20 kilowatt system that $50,000 would be the sticker price. You'd be looking at more like around $23,000 after all the rebates and incentives. A 100 kilowatt system would be cut basically in half. And so if you look at the next slide, please, Andy. So the next kind of piece of the puzzle then is how much. So that's the cost, and now the question is, what are you saving? And it does depend on which utility you are served by. These are the 5 utilities that serve most of the territory in Wisconsin. About probably 75-80% of the customers are served by one of these utilities. We also have a number of municipal utilities, about 82. We also have about 24, I think, electric cooperatives. Those I didn't have the space to show all their rates here, but just to give folks an idea of what you're paying if you're a business customer by utility and these are rough, but I did look up their rates to give some rough estimates here. But it's between, if you're a smaller or medium-sized business, it's between about 8 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's what you would be saving by producing your own solar electricity. If you're a larger business, you can fall into a different category where your rates might be lower, and therefore the amount of the rate that you're offsetting with your solar power is also lower. That could make your payback a little bit longer. So if you go to the next slide, um, another key piece is was what's called net metering, and the basic idea here is like rollover minutes for your cell phone. This is kind of like rollover minutes for solar power. And so the solar PV panels are making power during the day. You can roll that over if you can get on net metering. You can roll that over um, and get credit for electricity you're using at night, or for some utilities, you can also carry it over from one month to the next. You can carry it over from the summer months to the winter months, for example. And this is all in concert with your electric utility. And if you go to the next slide, we can see that each utility is a little bit different. We Energies allows this kind of rollover period for any solar PV system installed up to 300 kilowatts, and so that would be a pretty large installation on a like a Target store or a Walmart store or a pretty good sized manufacturer. Wisconsin Public Service customers and Alliant Energy customers, on the flip side, you can only do that rollover if you're a 20 kilowatt system or less, which is uh, could be great for a small business, medium sized business, but is not going to work for a larger installation. Xcel Energy and Madison Gas Electric are kind of in the middle. They allow this rollover net metering for about 100 kilowatt systems. And municipals and electric co-ops typically are more in the 20 kilowatt range. And your solar installer that you'd be working with can explain all of this to you and how it's going to affect your payback. But the net of everything is, once you look at the initial cost, all the tax benefits, the focus on energy incentives, and what the value of electricity that you're offsetting, your electric rates from your utilities, we're hearing a lot of businesses seeing 5 to 8 year paybacks throughout Wisconsin right now. If you think back to the fact that the cost of solar has come down 75% in the last decade, if you had done this 10 years ago, you'd be looking at like a 20 to 25 year payback for a lot of systems. Now that's down to 5 to 8 years. So it's really come down tremendously. Nonprofits and local governments who can't take advantage of the tax credits, at least not directly, are seeing 10 to 15 year paybacks. We're still seeing a lot of installations from those type of organizations as well. We also like to stress that doing nothing, if you decide not to install solar, that's not free either. You're paying your electric rates now. You're going to continue to pay those electric rates into the future for the 25 years that these solar panels, your solar power system would be expected to last. You will pay significantly more over time to continue paying those electric rates than you would by installing solar now, seeing that 5 to 8 year payback, and then having more or less free electricity flowing after the 8 years for the next 25 years, with the one exception of having to buy a replacement inverter in that 10 to 12 year time frame, which might be 5 to 10% of the total system cost. So a little bit of an expense out there, but nothing near what the amount of money you'll be saving by installing solar today. And that brings us to the conclusion here of our presentation. And I'll kick it back to Andy. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Andy.
All right. Thank you so much, Tyler. I'll go through questions we have here. See if we can answer questions for folks. Will we get a copy of the slides? Yes, we'll send around a copy of the slides, and we'll also post the recording of the webinar for either viewing by yourself or staff or colleagues, fellow businesses that may be interested. We will have that posted on several channels, both for Focus on Energy, and I imagine Renew Wisconsin will put this out as well. What is a typical payback? We actually just talked about that. And that is actually the end of our questions. So if anybody has further questions, please type them in. We can hang on for a couple more minutes. Otherwise, I want to thank everybody for their participation, and we'll look forward to a residential webinar we're actually having on June 21st at 11 a.m. Central Time. This will be largely the same presentation, but we'll focus a little bit more on residential applications as well. And I'm not seeing any other questions flow through. So with that, I guess we will end the webinar. Thank you everyone for attending.
Yep, and please feel free to email myself or Andy. Our email addresses are on there. If you do have further questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Andy. It's a great opportunity.
Thanks again to Tyler for taking us through all the benefits that solar can have for your business. Have a great day, everybody.